what's the expectation, I guess, going into game three from a physicality standpoint, and also the pressure that you feel, whether being at home or on the road, if it's any different?
Yeah, it was a little different in the old days, as I call it. Yeah, we because we used to play a best of three series, whether it was a semi final or a grand final series. We generally play game one on a Saturday night, and that would be a standalone. And then you'd play the following Friday, and then you'd play the Sunday sort of lunchtime game, Sunday afternoon game. So for me, my memories of game threes are all pretty good because we had a pretty fit team. Brian Gorgon as a coach early in his career. I think he still coaches his teams that way. But we were one of the fittest teams. Well, I think we were the fittest team in the league. So whenever it got to a game three, we generally felt like we had that advantage. The other team may have had more talent than us, which in the case of the Tigers, that was probably definitely the case when you think of Bradkey, Copeland, Gaze, Giddy, Dave Simmons, Sibley's, guys like that.
Mhm.
But we had the depth. So my memory of game threes was always, if we could get it to a game three, we felt like it was going to be in our favour, and that was generally the case. And it even in 1996, game three, because we back in the old days, we used to only play best of three for the grand final series,
Mhm.
not best of five as they do now. So game three was the deciding game, and we won that by 38 points against the Tigers in 1996. So
15,000
that
people.
game was, yeah, that was a great memory,
Mhm.
TB, of mine. Having a championship basically wrapped up at half time. By half time, we were up by about 30 points.
Mm.
So, you never count a victory at all, especially in a grand final series. But when you're up 30 points in the third quarter,
Yeah.
and you've got a pretty good team, and you're well conditioned. Yeah, we that was a fairly enjoyable 24 minutes.
Well, it's interesting that you say about those big leads, because we've seen Southeast Melbourne come back against Adelaide. We've just seen Perth come back from. I'd taken the dog for a walk at halftime. I was doing some soul searching. The way they come back out and come back in the third and the fourth. Um, but I guess on that point, I asked John really after game one about the chess match of a series. They were playing at pretty high pace. Now, normally you'd think on the road you try and make it a bit of a slobber knocker, but in game one it was still pretty high pace in the first quarter, and it was more interesting of if the finesse of the team and then playing fast all season, if that might be like a tactical play to become more of an advantage later in the series against perhaps some older players that Melbourne have. I mean, obviously Perth have got Bryce, but other than that, they probably do have young legs. So, and obviously with such a big travel difference that Perth are obviously more accustomed to, do you think that might come into the series in game three tomorrow night?
Yeah, it could. I mean, there's generally a couple of days between games, and it's a 40-minute game now. But you mentioned something pretty critical, and that for the Perth boys anyway, for the Perth team, and that's that travel.
Mm.
For them to have to fly over for game one last Thursday, then fly home for the Saturday game, and then then they've got to fly back to Melbourne again. For when do they play? The Tuesday. They play the Tuesday now.
Yep.
So yeah. So there's only 2 days between games. So you're right. That could become a factor. But yeah, I think Perth are going to play that high octane, sort of high tempo, high scoring sort of game, and I think that that's served them well. And if there's a slide on United at times, is that they can get a bit clunky offensively.
Yep.
Of course, it helps when CG 43's dropping 10 threes and could get 41 points, which is what he did in game one. But yeah, you can't necessarily rely on that, for all three games. And as we saw, I think CG, had 15 points, I think, in game two. So I think coming home, he'll probably feel a bit more,
Comfortable?
a bit more at home, at John Cain Arena. And I think after just dropping 41 the previous Thursday, I think he'll come out tomorrow night and be ready to light it up again.
Yeah, absolutely. And one player that I mentioned, I've kind of said all season, I feel he's the barometer for Melbourne United. And he did step up when Goulding went to the bench in the second quarter, was Ian Clark. Whereas in game two, he probably didn't have that same impact. And to the contrary with Perth, uh, maybe I should call out players on Twitter at the start of a game a little bit more often, because I was kind of, what does Windler do if he's not making threes and if he's running under screens? What's he bringing to the table? And then I think as soon as I hit enter on that in game two, he went what, and broke the game open. So it's interesting how those imports are such key aspects to the team, even though they might not be necessarily the featured player in picking up that slack.
Spot on. Yeah, no, spot on, mate. Yeah, I was asked before the series who the X factors were, and you've just mentioned both of them. I see Clark for United, to me, is a huge X factor and could be the difference when winning a title or not. And I think Windler or Windler, what is it? Is it Windler or Windler?
I think he goes well with
Windler.
Windler. Yeah.
What do we go with? Windler.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think Lockie Reed said he was taken with the Windler or something like
yeah, that's right. Gone
that.
with the wind.
Gone
Gone with
with
the
it.
Windler.
Yeah.
That's right, gone with the Windler. So we'll go with Windler. But yeah, we should get his name right, considering he basically,
Save the
I guess,
season.
won game two off his own bat. I think
Yeah.
he had 27 points, and yes, particularly in the second half. Maybe as soon as you pressed enter on your tweet, I think that's
But again,
maybe when,
I think it's his defensive impact that's probably more important, because if he's playing good defense on Golding, like Bryce chasing around Goulding just didn't make a lot of sense to me.
I agree.
I don't know why you'd want to wear down your elite scorer. But so your prediction for that game, and then we'll jump to the Illawarra one.
I agree. Well, I'm purely going to go with United in game three of that semi-finals.
Mhm.
Yeah, it just seems to be going to the home court advantage, and being there last Thursday night, I could, yeah, I can really see the X factor for United again. Ian Clark coming good, and of course, Perth have had a bit of trouble with Golding over the journey. So I'm going to stick with my original pick, and that's yeah, United in three.